To the world, they looked like best friends, but behind the scenes, things weren't always so friendly. Now, decades later, the truth about Tony Dow and the quiet tension with Hugh Beaumont has finally surfaced. Why Hugh Beaumont couldn't stand Tony Dow, the truth may surprise even the most loyal fans. And what caused that quiet resentment? The real story is more personal and more painful than anyone expected. Before we dive in, answer this in the comments. Did you watch Leave It to Beaver growing up? Type 1 if yes, or 0 if no. Let's see how many remember the golden age of television. And now, let's dive right in. A father-son bond on and off set. In the 1950s, Leave It to Beaver became a TV landmark. Clean, wholesome, and unforgettable. Tony Dow as Wally, the big brother every boy wanted. Jerry Mathers as Beaver, America's innocent heart. Despite the fact that fans will always remember Hugh Beaumont as the calm, patient, and considerate father figure Ward Cleaver on the cherished television series Leave It to Beaver, which aired in the 1950s, Hugh Beaumont had personal issues behind the scenes that were in sharp contrast to his attitude on screen. The fact that he had a deep-seated resentment for his co-star, Tony Dow, who portrayed his fictitious son, Wally Cleaver, was one of the most startling parts of his tenure on the program. And it was also one of the things that was rarely mentioned. On the show, Hugh Beaumont played Ward Cleaver, the wise, gentle, and sometimes stern father of Wally, Tony Dow, and Beaver, Jerry Mathers. Their on-screen chemistry was so convincing that many fans believed their relationship must have mirrored real life. And in many ways, it did. Tony Dow, who was only 12 when the show began, once said in interviews that Beaumont was like a second father to him. He described Hugh as kind, thoughtful, and always professional. Unlike some older actors of the time, Beaumont treated the young cast members with dignity and patience, often offering quiet guidance or leading by example. Hugh Beaumont was more than just an actor. He was also an ordained Methodist minister. He brought a deep moral seriousness to the role of Ward, which sometimes extended behind the scenes. He was known for his calm demeanor and for creating a supportive environment, especially important to young actors like Tony Dow and Jerry Mathers, who were navigating the pressures of fame while still attending school. Beaumont reportedly saw part of his off-screen role as helping the boys grow into responsible young men. Tony Dow remembered Hugh as someone who took time to explain things, both about acting and life, and who never treated the kids as mere child actors. Although Leave It to Beaver ended in 1963, the relationship between Dow and Beaumont left a lasting impact. In later interviews, Dow would speak fondly of Hugh Beaumont, clearly holding a deep respect for the man who played his fictional father. When Beaumont passed away in 1982, Dow reportedly took the news very hard and publicly acknowledged the huge influence Beaumont had on his life and career. Can friendship on screen ever survive real-life rivalry? Tense relationship with Tony Dow. In spite of the fact that the program depicted a picture-perfect American family, filled with touching father-son interactions and profound teachings about life, the connection that Beaumont and Dow had off-camera was anything but ideal. In spite of the fact that Hugh Beaumont was a strongly moral individual and a classically trained actor, he had entered the Hollywood industry somewhat grudgingly, motivated more by need than by desire. Before he became famous on television, he had been a preacher in the Methodist Church and had studied theology. On a personal and professional level, he was a firm believer in the need of order, respect, and discipline. He had the expectation that his co-stars, regardless of their age, would approach their work with the same amount of passion and sense of responsibility that he did. Beaumont was originally accommodating of Tony Dow's participation in the production, despite the fact that he had no prior acting experience and was only 12 years old at the time. However, he quickly became dissatisfied with what he believed to be Dow's lack of discipline and polish. The many errors, young energy, and restlessness behind the scenes that Dow displayed were a source of frustration for Beaumont, who thought that they broke the flow of the performance and undermined the professionalism that he was attempting to maintain. As the series progressed, it was stated that Beaumont's frustrations became more intense. He believed that Tony Dow was the weak link in a cast that was otherwise dedicated to maintaining the wholesome and emotional tone that made Leave It to Beaver such a successful show. Beaumont apparently considered Dow as an undisciplined and at times arrogant young actor who did not show sufficient respect to the elder actors or the crew. This was despite the fact that Dow's popularity with viewers was rising and that he had a natural connection with Jerry Mathers, Beaver. A number of individuals with knowledge of the situation have even stated that Beaumont quietly advocated for Dow to be removed, although this plan was never implemented. The age and psychological disparities that existed between the two also contributed to the escalation of tensions. Beaumont was a traditionalist who had firm beliefs on the moral obligations of television, as well as the family and behavior of individuals. Dow, on the other hand, was a child of the late 1950s and early 1960s, a historical period that was characterized by shifting social norms, acts of defiance by young people, and a relaxation of authority structures. Beaumont frequently mistook Dow's casual demeanor and lack of experience for a lack of devotion or laziness, despite the fact that Dow was not in any way rude. The gap between them, both emotionally and philosophically, became wider as a result of their disagreements. Despite the fact that Beaumont took his duty as a father figure seriously, even offset, the hatred that Beaumont felt toward Dow only rose when Dow did not live up to his own specifications. Furthermore, there were allegations that Dow, as he grew older and developed more self-assurance, occasionally questioned the orders that were given to him or offered other ideas regarding his personality. In spite of the fact that this may have been construed by some as an indication of maturity or initiative, Beaumont considered it to be an instance of exceeding bounds. When Beaumont watched these instances, he regarded them as emblematic of a larger cultural deterioration in respect for elders and authority. The idea that a youngster would express himself in such a manner in the company of an experienced actor was unbearable to Beaumont. It seemed to the general public that they had a healthy relationship, which is a credit to the expertise of both performers. On the other hand, it was tense in private. Many who were close to the production have noticed Beaumont's evident anger during rehearsals and his occasional brusque exchanges with Dow. Despite the fact that Beaumont kept a respectable face and never allowed his personal sentiments to interfere blatantly with his performance, many who were close to the production have recalled his behavior. There were even many who suspected that Beaumont's inability to connect with Dow was a contributing factor in his frustration with Leave It to Beaver as a whole, which he felt sometimes restricted his artistic potential. Hugh Beaumont was apparently pleased to put the part and his rocky relationship with Tony Dow behind him by the time the show's run of 6 seasons came to an end. It was unusual for him to mention Dow in interviews, despite the fact that he maintained a polite demeanor while discussing his time spent on Leave It to Beaver in public. And whenever he did it with a markedly lower level of warmth than when he was talking about other members of the ensemble. Among all of his professional relationships, the one that he considered to be the most challenging and maybe even the one that he despised the most was the one he had with Tony Dow. This was quite apparent to those who knew him the best. During the final years of the program's run, Dow and other cast members, especially Jerry Mathers, frequently expressed appreciation for their time spent working on the show. Dow himself appeared to be oblivious of or unconcerned by Beaumont's hostility. On the other hand, it's possible that he decided to rise above it. Despite this, the presence of Tony Dow caused Beaumont, who was otherwise the embodiment of controlled parenting, to experience a profound and long-lasting irritation. This anger was motivated by the fact that it was in direct opposition to the idealized depiction of family togetherness that the world witnessed on their television screens on a weekly basis. So what really caused the strain? It wasn't until years later, in interviews and memoirs, that hints of the truth began to surface. It wasn't just childhood jealousy or fame, it was deeper. If you love uncovering the real stories behind classic Hollywood, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. There's so much more coming your way. Early life. Hugh Beaumont's upbringing in a humble family in the Midwest provided him with the opportunity to cultivate strong moral and spiritual beliefs that would serve as a compass for him throughout his whole life, both in his personal and professional endeavors. His formative years were influenced by the Midwest of the United States, and his subsequent relocation to California opened his eyes to a larger world that encompassed not just the entertainment business, but also religious endeavors. After completing his undergraduate studies at the University of Chattanooga, Beaumont went on to pursue his Master of Theology degree at the University of Southern California through a transfer program. One of the things that set him apart from many of his peers in Hollywood was his spiritual background. Despite the fact that he was seeking a career in acting, he never deviated from his profession as a clergyman. When he was not working on the set, he frequently worked as a substitute preacher in Southern California. Additionally, His religious beliefs served as a rich source of motivation, which enabled him to endow a number of his parts, most notably the one he played as Ward Cleaver, with a quiet dignity, a moral compass, and an authenticity that struck a chord with viewers of many generations. Acting career. In the 1940s, Hugh began his career as an actor by participating in a number of low-budget films and serials. He was frequently placed in roles that were either rough or morally upright characterizations. During his early career, he became known for his work in the film noir genre, most notably for his role as private investigator Michael Shane in a number of films. The combination of his tall stature, steady voice, and calm manner made him a dependable character actor throughout this time period. He was able to effortlessly segue from B-movie thrillers, westerns, and early television, so constructing a broad CV that would finally culminate in his most enduring part. Hugh Beaumont became a household name in 1957, when he was cast in the role of Ward Cleaver in the television show Leave It to Beaver. Over the course of the conservative years that followed World War II, the program, which revolved around the day-to-day exploits of the Cleaver family, managed to strike a chord with American audiences. In his role as Ward, Beaumont delivered a performance that exemplified the ideal 1950s father. He was authoritarian yet still showing compassion. His character helped his boys, Wally and the Beaver, by providing them with kind direction and by imparting moral teachings in a manner that was not harsh but rather loving and patient at the same time. The connection that he shared with his co-star Barbara Billingsley, who played his on-screen wife June, contributed to the formation of one of the most cherished and romanticized families in the history of television. In spite of the fact that the series received a relatively low level of response at first, it eventually became a classic thanks to repeats. And Beaumont's portrayal of the ideal fatherhood on film became a defining example of the genre. When Beaumont was working behind the scenes, he was genuinely devoted to ensuring that the set was always treated with professionalism and respect. He frequently assisted the young actors with their lines and encouraged them to take their studies seriously. He showed a personal interest in the well-being and education of the child players. As a result of his fatherly presence that stretched beyond the screen and into the lives of people he worked with, he garnered respect and adoration from many in the profession. Even after the conclusion of Leave It to Beaver in 1963, Beaumont continued to work in the film and television industries, albeit on a less regular basis. He made appearances as a guest on a number of well-known television programs, including Petticoat Junction, Mannix, and The Virginian. Not only did he pursue a career in performing, but he also tried his hand at writing and directing, putting his intelligence and imagination to use in ventures that were behind the camera. In the late 1960s, he started to reduce his involvement in the entertainment industry in order to devote more time to his personal life and spiritual pursuits. He moved to Minnesota and started working as a tree farmer, where he found the tranquility and simplicity that country life provided, which was a striking contrast to the hectic lifestyle of Hollywood. In addition to his work in the film industry, Hugh Beaumont possessed a tremendous amount of skill. It was throughout his career that he established himself not just as an actor but also as a talented writer, demonstrating a remarkable range that he displayed throughout his career. Beaumont was able to demonstrate his ability to construct captivating narratives that were specifically adapted for the small screen during the golden age of television by selling a number of television screenplays throughout the course of his career. It was not just television that he wrote for. In addition, he was a writer of radio scripts, which was a medium that relied only on audio and required snappy dialogue and vivid narrative in order to fascinate people. The literary influence of Beaumont stretched beyond the realm of broadcast media and into the realm of print, where he published short tales to a variety of popular periodicals during that time period. These works further solidified his creative legacy by demonstrating his profound awareness of story and character development. These are talents that undoubtedly complemented his acting career, but also solidified his reputation. In the course of the evolution of the entertainment business and the shifts in opportunities, Beaumont progressively began to separate himself from acting. In his pursuit of a lifestyle that was less hectic and more grounded, he went on a novel and unanticipated endeavor that was located far away from the glare of Hollywood, which was Christmas tree farming. A farm near Grand Rapids, Minnesota, which he had acquired and nurtured, was the location where he devoted his time and energy to cultivating and tending to Christmas trees. This second vocation not only gave him the opportunity to interact with the natural world, but it also provided a tranquil alternative to the hectic demands of the entertainment industry. It is possible that the seasonal nature of Christmas tree farming provided Beaumont with a rhythm and regularity that was distinct from the unpredictability of performing roles. This may have been a reflection of his desire for stability and simplicity in his latter years. As a result of the severe stroke that Beaumont experienced in 1970, his active life was unfortunately cut short due to the medical issues that he faced. Because of this critical medical occurrence, which marked a turning point, he was forced to reassess his commitments to his professional pursuits. When Beaumont finally decided to formally retire from acting in 1972, he had spent years juggling a number of other artistic endeavors in addition to his new farming enterprise. Following decades of commitment to the arts and his own personal endeavors, his retirement not only marked the conclusion of a phase in his multifarious career, but also provided him with the opportunity to take a well-deserved break. Despite the fact that Beaumont had removed himself from the spotlight, he maintained a close attachment to the character that brought him the most fame. A reunion of cast members from the television show Leave It to Beaver was held in 1980, and he made a special appearance at the event. The reunion was organized by a local television station in Los Angeles. This reunion was a poignant acknowledgement to the show's ongoing success and the revered role Beaumont had in the history of television. It provided fans and colleagues alike with the opportunity to appreciate his accomplishments for a final time. Private life. On a lesser scale, Beaumont's private life was as important and had a big role in shaping a substantial portion of his identity. The wedding that took place on April 13, 1941, was conducted at the Hollywood Congregational Church, and it was attended by the actress Katherine Adams Nahan. Their union was one that was founded on the fact that they had experienced similar things inside the entertainment business. It lasted for more than 3 decades, which is a significant amount of time in an industry that is notorious for having short-term partnerships. They brought up 3 children together, a girl named Christy, 2 sons named Hunter and Mark, and a daughter named Christy. It is evident that Beaumont placed a significant amount of importance on their family life, which, although being kept somewhat quiet, served as a basis for him beyond his professional activities. On the other hand, Hugh Beaumont and Katherine Adams divorced in 1974, signaling the end of their long-term union. This occurred after they had been married for around 33 years. Through his children, notably his eldest son, Hunter Beaumont, Beaumont's legacy was carried on for generations to come. Hunter carved out his own route away from the glare of Hollywood, becoming a psychotherapist and author in the process. His contributions to the fields of mental health and literature are evidence of the intellectual and creative milieu that it is likely that he was exposed to throughout his childhood. Hunter spent a significant portion of his life in Germany, where he made significant contributions to the area of psychotherapy and continued to do so until his death in 2023. This particular aspect not only draws attention to the worldwide imprint that the Beaumont family has left behind, but it also exemplifies the myriad of ways in which Hugh Beaumont's impact stretched beyond his immediate career in acting and writing. Tragic death. Hugh Beaumont, who was 72 years old at the time of his death, suffered a heart attack on May 14, 1982, when he was in Munich, West Germany, to visit his son Hunter. A varied life that stretched far beyond his internationally renowned role as Ward. Cleaver on the cherished television series Leave It to Beaver came to an end with his passing. His death marked the end of a life like no other. Not only was the passing of Beaumont a tragedy for the entertainment industry, but it was also a tragedy for those who knew him in the many other positions that he served during his life. Hugh Beaumont was not just active in the world of television acting, but he was also a man of profound religion and unwavering convictions. During the course of his flourishing acting career, Beaumont, who was a certified Methodist pastor, had continued his studies in theology and maintained his religious credentials. He continued to be actively involved in religious life and was known to officiate marriages, deliver eulogies, and lead burial services for members of his family, friends, and community, despite the fact that he did not serve as a pastor on a full-time basis. Because of his kind nature, strong moral compass, and imposing presence, he was an especially good fit for these roles. These ceremonies were attended by a large number of people, and many of them commented on the sincerity and emotional depth that he brought to them. Beaumont did not consider these actions to be performances. Rather, he saw them as occasions to offer solace, direction, and spiritual leadership, providing further evidence of the kind temperament that so many people connected with his character on TV. Beaumont was a man of many abilities, including music. In addition to his religious endeavors, he was especially talented in music. He had a considerable amount of success as a jazz drummer prior to his rise to popularity on television, and he continued to pursue this interest throughout his whole life. He regularly participated in impromptu jam sessions with musicians and played with small jazz bands in the area. He also loved playing with other musicians. Beaumont was noted for his drumming that was both technically accomplished and emotionally expressive. He had a profound awareness of rhythm and melody, and his drumming was in high demand. Beaumont discovered that music provided him with a creative outlet that offered him a tremendous deal of satisfaction, whether or not he was playing in small club settings or simply drumming with his friends for fun. A part of him that very few people who were lovers of his acting profession ever saw was revealed by his musical skill, which gave another depth to his already complicated nature. When Hugh Beaumont was away from the cameras and the lights of the studio, he found peace in the natural world. Having a passion for the great outdoors, he devoted a significant portion of his spare time to discovering the natural world. One of his favorite things to do was go fishing, and he would frequently go on lengthy journeys to distant lakes and rivers, sometimes with his buddies, and other times by himself with his thoughts. So, camping and hiking were two of his favorite activities, and he cherished the tranquility and simplicity that came with being surrounded by natural features such as woods, mountains, or streams. Through these outings into the countryside, he was able to detach himself from the constraints of Hollywood and re-establish a connection with the more reflective and calmer aspects of his personality. Beaumont's friends and family frequently remarked on his profound reverence for the natural world and his conviction that spending time in the great outdoors was essential for the development of the soul. The caustic and sometimes razor-sharp sense of humor that Beaumont possessed was well recognized among his colleagues, despite the fact that he was known for his somber image as the prototypical television father of the 1950s. When he was working on the set of Leave It to Beaver, he constantly entertained his fellow cast members by telling humorous tales, engaging in playful taunting, and regularly delivering puns and jokes. After some time had passed, members of the cast, such as Jerry Mathers and Tony Dow, recounted how Beaumont would always maintain a lighthearted atmosphere during the many days of filming. He would frequently utilize his humor to diffuse tension or just brighten someone's day. The type of comedy that lingered in the air and made people laugh long after the punchline had dropped was the kind of humor that he had. His personality was subtle and intellectual. Not only was it a fundamental component of who he was, but it was also a trait that contributed to the formation of the ensemble and the development of the familial dynamic that people responded to so positively on screen. There was a great deal of humanity, complexity, and depth in Hugh Beaumont's life at every turn. He was a man of honesty, generosity, and intellect in all he did, whether he was ministering to a family that was going through a difficult time, playing the drums in a jazz club that was filled with smoke, trekking, a mountain route, or sharing a joke on a television set. Not only does his legacy continue on via the reruns of Leave It to Beaver, but it also lives on in the people whose lives he touched and the example he established as a man of integrity, skill, and compassion. When Tony Dow learned of Hugh Beaumont's death in 1982, he was deeply affected. The two had developed a close bond during their years working on Leave It to Beaver, and Dow considered Beaumont to be a true father figure. The final goodbye. Tony Dow remembers Hugh Beaumont. The last scene of Leave It to Beaver had wrapped, the lights dimmed, the laughter faded, and the cast gathered for hugs and farewells. For 6 years, they had been a family, not just on screen, but in the quiet moments between takes. In the center of it all was Hugh Beaumont, the gentle, wise father figure who had guided not only the fictional Cleaver family, but also the young cast growing up in front of America's eyes. Tony Dow, just a teenager when he started playing Wally Cleaver, looked up to Hugh in more ways than one. Beaumont wasn't just the man who delivered fatherly advice with perfect timing on camera. Off camera, he was calm, patient, thoughtful, qualities Tony quietly absorbed like a sponge. He didn't know it at the time, but those moments would linger for the rest of his life. When the final curtain closed in 1963, there were no grand send-offs. Everyone promised to stay in touch. But life has a way of moving fast and with little mercy. Hugh Beaumont retreated from Hollywood soon after the show ended. He moved to Minnesota, where he focused on writing and spending time with his family. Tony, meanwhile, faced the whirlwind of post-child stardom. College. The Air National Guard. directing, and eventually, sculpting. Years passed. Occasionally, Tony would think of calling Hugh, maybe sending a letter. But each time, something else came up. Work, life, time zones. He figured there would always be time. But there wasn't. In May 1982, Tony received the news. Hugh Beaumont had died of a heart attack while visiting his son in Germany. He was 73. The realization hit like a punch in the gut. Not just the shock of loss, but the sharp regret of never having said goodbye properly. Tony was in his 30s then, old enough to understand that not all goodbyes are planned. He later told interviewers, "I always thought there'd be time. I kept putting it off. I really wish I had gotten to see him one last time and thank him properly." Tony Dow's reaction to Hugh Beaumont's passing. During talks that took place many years later, Dow expressed both thankfulness and regret for Beaumont's demise. It was him who said, "I felt as though he was my biological father. It was from him that I gained a great deal of knowledge on acting, how to interact with other people, and life in general." The loss was significant. Throughout his career, Dow, who had joined the entertainment industry partly by accident after having been a professional diver, has consistently credited Beaumont for assisting him in navigating the market with humility and elegance. The manner in which Hugh Beaumont conducted himself on set was one of gentleness and encouragement. He frequently acted as a guide for Dow and Jerry Mathers, Beaver, leading them not just through their lines but also through the expectations and obligations that come with growing up in the spotlight. A quiet mentor remembered. During the time when Beaumont passed away, Tony Dow did not make a significant public comment because he chose to keep his mourning private. However, over the course of several decades, he has made it abundantly obvious in interviews that Beaumont's impact remained with him throughout his whole life. When Dow and Mathers got back together in 2014 for an event that was dedicated to old television, Dow recalled the following. Hugh exemplified the very definition of a professional. Fourth, in addition to showing they were well prepared, he put forth a lot of effort and treated everyone with respect. In addition to that, he exuded an air of solace in his presence. With him around, I never lacked a sense of security. In Dow's eyes, the loss of Beaumont was comparable to the death of an actual family member. The foundation of their connection was laid over the course of many years of collaboration, which began throughout their formative adolescence and continued into their teenage years. In response to questions about Hugh, Dow would frequently grin and point out that Ward Cleaver was only a character, but that the actor who played him, Hugh Beaumont, was in fact just as nice, solid, and smart in real life. It is not an exaggeration to suggest that the individual who portrayed the role of Tony Dow's television father had a significant impact on both Tony Dow's personal and professional ideals. Over the years, his warm remembrances speak eloquently about the extraordinary relationship that they shared, which is a link that fans continue to love today. They never met again after the series ended, but in every meaningful way, Hugh Beaumont never really left Tony Dow. And perhaps that's the true ending, not a final farewell, but a lasting influence that lived on quietly, like a good father's love. In the end, it wasn't hate. It was fame, youth, and the weight of growing up under a spotlight too bright for most. Was the tension between them just part of growing up in Hollywood or something deeper? Let us know in the comments. Like this video if you still remember, leave it to Beaver. And subscribe for more untold stories of Hollywood's golden age.